Hello, class. I hope you had a great lunch. We're going to get into a basic 90-degree haircut. Now, we've already covered our sanitation and our sterilization rules before lunch, and so now I would like to get into the cut. There's a few different rules I want to kind of go over with you. A few different things I want to discuss with you. We're going to start out with our clean doll heads, very wet hair. It's nice to keep a cutting spray or some kind of just water around, just because it's a lot easier to get through our haircut if our doll head's hair or our client's hair is wet. We want to keep it evenly saturated as we're doing a cut because the hair has a tendency to change when it dries out. Another thing I want to do just for your safety is to actually go in and remind you that we only want to be using the cutting blade. Okay, we never want to cut past our second knuckle because this could cause injury on our fingers underneath on top, depending on which angle we're holding it. Now that we've covered that, I'm just going to show you a little bit of how to section this foresection. What we want to do is we want to start out with the center part. I like to take it right at the bridge of the nose and go all the way back to the nape of the neck first, sectioning the hair into two sections. Combing it down very clean. I like to use my small teeth when I do this after I've taken out all the tangles. Then when we get into our next section, we've now broken it into two sections. We're going to take at the top of the head or the apex, and we're going to section down just behind the ears on both sections. We're going to take them and section them off into little quadrants, and then we're going to drop about an inch guide at the bottom. And this is where we're going to start. When doing any type of haircut, especially when you're new, you always want to make sure you follow your guides and keep your guide where it is controllable. So we don't want to take much more than about an inch. When you're doing a real person, sometimes the hair is thicker and you may need to take a little less, and sometimes the hair is thinner and you can take a little bit more. But for today, we're going to take just about an inch. Now, the reason we need to learn a 90-degree haircut is because it is one of the most adaptable cuts to many different types of styles. It is something you will be using throughout your career. So let's get started. We're going to comb the hair straight down and taking our inch section, and as you notice, my doll head is pointed a little bit forward. I'm going to take this section straight down at a natural fall. I'm going to be cutting the hair at about 5 inches. Then I'm going to start in the center. You never want to start on one end. If you start on one end and work to the other end, you're always going to get an uneven line. It's very hard to do a perfectly straight line. So you start in the center, you work yourself out to the edge, holding the hair straight down. Then you will start on the other side and you will move across this section. Now I like to, before I do anything else, pull my guide out, and then I'm going to be noticing that it's even on both sides. Okay, that's where we're going to start. The guide is the most important portion of your haircut. You comb it straight down, you make sure it's perfectly even, and then if you have a foundation that is even and straight, it's a lot easier to get into your cut. So now that we have our foundation, we're going to go in and take another inch section. Notice I'm using the tail of my clip because it makes it a little easier on me. I want to make sure my sections are very clean and even. As a newbie or a new student, we want to make sure that we are fully keeping our haircut under control. This is something that is extremely important because this is how we learn. I like to take and resaturate the section a little bit. Notice I'm going up towards the base because this is where it dries out first. We don't really have to worry too much about the ends of the hair because they're going to be holding the water. Okay, now, when we do a basic 90-degree haircut, we're going to be holding the hair out at a 90-degree angle. 90 degrees basically means straight out from the head as it grows. So as I'm pulling the hair out, you will notice it is circling around and it's going straight out from the head. Here we go. I'm going to take a small section. I'm literally taking a little bit larger than my own fingers. Okay, I pull it straight out. Now, as we can see, there is a guide, and I'm going to show it to you right here, and this is what we're going to be following. Now, it appears as though I'm pulling the hair out at a 45-degree angle. I am not. The head is round. The hair moves around, and it will just slowly pull out. I drop that section. I take a tiny bit of the hair that I have not cut and a tiny bit of the hair that I'm going to be cutting, and use that as well as my guide. So now I kind of have two guides. It's going to make life a little bit easier for me. Make sure your sections are very, very even. Pulling them straight out, cutting up. You never want to go past that second knuckle. Pulling straight out, dropping the hair. Now we're going to do the next section. Now we are working with what is called a traveling guide. That means the guide travels along with us. One thing we want to do is make sure that we know what type of a guide we're using. If you have a stationary guide, that means that you're pulling the hair to that guide. So if I had a stationary guide, I'd be taking this hair and pulling it back. But I have a traveling guide, and this is how I choose to work with my traveling guide. Straight out, here we go. Now, as we notice, our client can wiggle around, so can our doll head a little bit, so just make sure that you're not, that she's not moving around for you. Now, on this last section, we want to make sure that we kind of just pull it, we're still pulling it straight out, but we're pulling it slightly back, because what happens is often we can, if we do not pull it slightly back, the hairline will cause a divot in this section. Okay, moving around, I'm going to go a little quicker just because we don't want to take forever to do this. Working on our sections again. Now if you notice, I switched my hand slightly. Now I'm cutting down on this side. The other side I was cutting, I had my fingers up, and it's because of the way that my hands move. It makes it a lot easier. Don't cut past that second knuckle. And again, I'm pulling this section slightly back so as not to get the divot. Now, we should be able to comb this hair out and see that we have a relatively even line, which we do. We're going to take our next section, pulling this out. Make sure that that hair is nice and evenly combed. Flip it up into this section. Again, around to the back, into another section. Combing the hair down. Make sure she's thoroughly saturated at the base. Start in the center again, working your way out. Make sure that we are pulling it straight out again from this area, so we're going to hold it right about there. It's okay to do that. Now, when you get to this section, and it's always easier for me to hold the hair out, and then I'm going to cut up. Notice my fingers are now above the hair. I am standing behind it, and I am now above. Now, one thing to remember while doing your 90 is you do not want to over-direct the head, okay? You do not want to over-direct your fingers. If you do that, you're going to get longer hair, and I'm going to show you, or shorter hair. So if I was to pull it up, this hair would be longer and this hair would be shorter. And that's how a lot of people make some mistakes within this haircut. You don't want to do that. You always have to be really aware of where your fingers are held. Again, this is our last section on this side. We're going to pull it out. See how the hairline is right here? We want to make sure that we are pulling this straight back. and out from where the hair grows. Okay, we don't want to pull it this way, we don't want to pull it this way, we want to pull it straight across that line. Now, just like we're moving the doll head, we can move our clients around a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that. It actually helps, you know, to maintain our cut. Again, not cutting too much hair at a time. Now, one thing that you can see here is that I am holding my elbow up and out. If you tag your elbow or move your elbow and your wrist improperly, you can also affect that 90-degree cut. So you've got to make sure that you're maintaining that hair coming straight out from where it goes and not moving your elbow too much. So you want to keep everything pretty straight and smooth. Taking your last section, this little part, we kind of pull it up to the back. Don't want to take too much hair. There we go. And so you can kind of see how the hair is starting to layer. If you drag the hair up or down, you will get a ledge in there that doesn't make it a seamless layered cut. Next section. You're now getting towards the top of this hair. I like to make sure I keep that hair out of my way when I get to the top, because it actually helps me. So now we can slightly straighten our doll head. Again, we're still combing out, holding our fingers out away from the head. See, we don't want to go up or down, because then we're going to be taking that up or down, because then we're going to be taking off too much hair. Next section. Now, something that I want to show you guys here, which is really helpful, especially when you're a new one, is as you comb this hair out, you not only have this section here, but if you drop this, you can see you have a bit of your guide. So you almost have like two guides to follow. So it makes it almost impossible for you to kind of botch this up. Although, when you're learning, everybody kind of messes it up a little bit, and then that's okay. We figure out why, and the only way that we learn is by making mistakes. Pulling it straight out. We're over the ear, so I like to slightly draw it back to this section and drop it. We're going to do the other side, moving right along. Within our haircut, see, we can see our other guide in there, as well as the guide below. Makes life a lot easier. And when you're taking these smaller sections, it also creates a little bit more confidence, because you can see your guideline on both sides. If you take a really large section, you kind of lose your guide, and then you lose the 90-degree cut that we're trying so hard to keep here. Now, you can see I'm moving out over this section. We have the guide here. Actually, that was a little bit large. You could see, you could hardly see the guideline, so we're going to take a little more. And lastly, taking this down, seeing the guide, and cutting. See how lovely that's becoming? It's becoming a haircut that anyone can wear. It's a perfect street haircut. You can do a little adaptation to it. Now, we're in the top of the head. As we know, our head is a cylinder. So when this haircut is done, you should be able to pull that hair straight out, and it would be even, like a sphere around the head. Now, you notice that section was a little large, but that's okay because I'm not going to be using the whole thing. I like to cut on the round of the head. We have to follow the circle. And when you're at the top section, you're going to be taking more of a triangular or a pie section because you are working on a sphere or a rounded object. Now, combing the hair straight out, we can see our guide right here. So, I'm going to go to here, then I will take my next section and cut that. So I'm not cutting past my second knuckle, and I'm still coming straight out from the head. Take my next pie section. They're still only about an inch wide at most. You can see the hair underneath, a little bit here. Now come up here, we take a little bit here. Moving to our next section, our little pie section again. Now you notice I left my doll head a little bit looser so it would be easier for you guys to see. But you can move her around and tighten her up a whole lot when you're working on her. You don't want her moving around quite as much as she is with me. But you can notice, what you'll notice is I'm not like pulling on the hair and you know, being real rough with the head, because you don't need to be. As long as you have nice clean hair and the hair is actually sectioned for you, and you don't have to worry about you know, if you get a tangle in there, you can just kind of move it out. But I'm not being really harsh on my client or my model. Bring our last section up. I never cut past the second knuckle. We're going to go off onto this side, still holding my arm and my hand up in the same direction, but in this you can actually kind of see my little pie sectioning. Remember, we're following our guide. We are not measuring how much hair we're cutting off, because if you have a client who's had a previous haircut and it's a little longer in one section, and you go, oh my gosh, I took 6 inches off on the bottom, but I'm only taking 3 sections off on the top, 3 inches off on the top, you could make a mistake. And I've had a few questions on that before, so there, I just covered it for you. Again, pulling the hair up. Here we go, nice even sectioning. We can see our dolly. The back of her hair is almost done. Now, we're going to do some cross-checking on the back of the head. We've got one more section to cut. See, I'm holding it straight up, and from that area, you can see that how easily it could go out in a circle. So now at this point, you should be able to pull the hair out and section her and see that we're relatively even everywhere. And if you do your 90-degree cut right, you will have that nice section. We have one little tiny section on this side that we have. There we go. She is now within, our back section is clipped up. You can see how pretty it is, that she has some nice layers. Now, how do we move to the front? There is an easy way to deal with this. I like to take a small section over the ear and a small section in the front of the head. This always seems to work by far the best for me. Take this hair and clip it out of my way. Again, we're going 1 inch around the front and 1 inch over the back, to the side. So this will make it really easy for us to blend these sections. So oftentimes I see people just kind of go in and do the rest of the 90 without cutting a guide in the front, and we will even cut a small guide on the top. And that's not wise, because once you do that, then you are no longer going to be, it's not going to be as easy to control your guide. Now you see I straightened her out because I don't want her at that angle. I'm in the front of the head, so now we want to straighten our dollies out. Tighten her up and straighten her out. Okay, so remember in the back I said we wanted to cut it about the same length as the front because this is a 90 degrees. So you can take your comb, and most combs have a actual numbers on them. My comb does not. So I just want to make sure it's about the same length as the front. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to pull it forward, take it to about this area. We want to make it be about 6 inches long. Actually, she's about 7 inches long. And then we want to move at an angle towards the back. Now, what we're doing is we're going to basically connect these lines. Boom. So your finger is going to be your ruler, your scissors is going to be cutting it. So your finger is going to follow the hairline formation, and we're going to work down to that bottom section here. Now, I will take some of the hair, the last hair that I previously cut, comb it straight down. Now, one thing that we have to remember on a human, it's not so bad with our doll heads, is we have ears. So we never want to pull this straight down and then cut it, because what will happen is we will get a divot within our haircut down towards the bottom. So we want to allow it to be here, let the natural fall happen, and then we're going to cut straight across right here. Same thing again, I kind of let it fall through my fingers a little bit, straight across. Then it makes it super easy for me to finish my line. Straightforward. My dolly is getting a little dry. What did I say? We want to make sure it's at the base because it will travel down. Here we go. Pulling the hair forward. Now, if I pull the hair up, it's going to get a little shorter. If I pull it down too far, it's going to get too short or too long. We just kind of want to let it drop out as natural fall. Not yanking on the hair. We're going to go back to that same thing on the other side, where we're pulling the hair straight down, making sure we have a nice even line across here. Drop that hair. Clip, clip, clip. Remember, we're making sure that we have the natural fall so that it doesn't give you a divot or an indentation above the ear. Now, we will pull her forward. I always like to be checking to make sure they're even in the front, and she is. I'm going to show you guys that. You want to pull it forward, make sure it's even in the front, and make sure everything's pretty even out here. Very even before you go into the next step. Now, I am going to take a small section down the center of what I call, and what is known as a mohawk section. The reason we do this little mohawk section down the center of the head is because it'll blend the front with the back a lot easier. Again, you want to do the mohawk section, it blends the front with the back a lot easier. Comb that hair down. We will eventually section that hair up again. So we're going to comb her down. We're going to start at the very front, again taking smaller sections. We want to blend these two lines. Again, 90 degrees, pulling it straight out from the hair, the way the hair grows. Straight up from the head. Now, we can take a little bit and see right here, you can kind of see we're real even. So this is our next section, cutting across the top, and then our last section, blending the two sides together, and voila, we are relatively even. You might have a tiny little point. Now, the only thing we have left to do is blend this top with the sides, and that's going to be real easy. Section it out, keeping it away from your head. I like to take my section, clip it off, and here we go. Never cutting past that second knuckle. This is going to be into 2 or 3 tiny sections. Now here we have a little bit of our front guide to follow, our bottom guide. Drop it out. Take your next section. Pulling it straight out from the head, clipping it up. Pull again. Make sure you keep your line even, nice and easy to keep control, not past the second knuckle. Again, here we go. Last and final section. I'm going to saturate her a little more at the base. Now, this looks like a large section, but don't remember we cut that center already. So now what we're doing, taking that hair, combing it out, you can kind of see that we don't have a whole lot left to do here on this side. We are blending the two lines from here to here, clipping that off, taking that next section up, clip, clip, and here we go. Section 2. Just a little bit left to do. Last and final piece, and then we will work on the other side, doing the same thing until we are done. Got our guideline under there, following through, not past the second knuckle, pulling the hair straight through. It seems like it takes longer because we're taking tiny little sections, and it does, but as you progress in your career, you will notice that the more precise you do things when you're learning, the more precise things will be when you get out into the salon world. You do not want to have a mess, and the more precise you learn, the better off you're going to be when you get into the salon. So you can see my guide under there, very easy. As you move up the head, You're pulling it, still pulling it straight out from the way it grows. Remember our last and final section. Pulling it straight up from the growth pattern. Here we go. We can cross-section this and check it once we get it, pulling it straight up on the top, cleaning up any little areas that we haven't quite flipped up yet, because this is how the hair grows. It grows straight up right here. And voila! We are done with our basic 90-degree cut. Now I like to go in and cross-check everything, because sometimes you leave a few little points out, little pieces, and before you bring it to me, when we go through, I want to go back in and check everybody's haircut. Now, we can see she's got layers all over her head. You can see how evenly she is. And there, we finished it. Next, we're going to go into a styling technique, but we won't do that today, or we won't do that until we've all covered our 90-degree cut. Now again, a 90-degree cut is growing straight out from the way it grows. On a doll head, you can check this pretty evenly, that she kind of goes around and looks real even as you pull her and drop her around. If you have any questions, now is the time to ask, and I will answer as I can get down the list. And then we're going to get our doll heads out. We're going to shampoo them, comb them, section them into 4 sections, and before you start any sort of a cut, I would like to check your dollies and make sure you have them sectioned appropriately. I want you to show me where the apex is, where the nape of the neck is, where we started our guideline, and I want you to kind of explain what you learned from me today, and then we'll go in and do the cut. Thank you. Let's get on with this.